The luminous glow of the twin moons of Sci-fiseries danced across the observation deck, casting long shadows on the shimmering instrumentation. Lorana Vox, chief xenobiologist of the Zephyrian research vessel Celestia, stared out at the vast expanse of stars, her golden eyes sparkling with anticipation. Tonight would mark a historic moment for her people, the first official contact with the mysterious humans of Earth. Lorana absently twirled a lock of her silver hair around a slender blue finger as she reviewed the limited data they had on the human species. Bipedal, oxygen breathers, with a confounding variety of skin tones and biological adaptations to their planet's many environments. But it was their reputation that intrigued her the most. Humans were known across the galaxy as a passionate, unpredictable race, with a capacity for both great violence and profound compassion. A chime from her holoscreen stirred Lorana from her musings. "The Earth ship has docked," announced the deep voice of Captain Zoran. "The human delegation is on their way to the observation deck now." "Thank you, Captain," Lorana replied, smoothing the shimmering fabric of her uniform. As the doors slid open with a pneumatic hiss, she turned to greet the new arrivals, reminding herself that she represented the entire Zephyrian consensus. She must embody the stoic discipline and emotional control her people were known for. But as the humans stepped onto the deck, Lorana felt her composure falter. Leading them was a tall male, with short auburn hair and piercing green eyes that seemed to look straight into her very essence. He moved with a predator's grace, his red and black uniform suit outlining the lean, compact musculature that spoke of a lifetime of physical challenges. When those striking eyes met hers, Lorana felt a jolt of something unidentifiable yet exhilarating surge through her system. "I'm Commander Jace Riker of the Earth ship Odyssey," the human said, his voice a rich, resonant timbre that made Lorana's heart skip a beat. "It's an honor to be welcomed aboard the Celestia." He extended his hand. 5 fingers splayed outward. Lorana stared at it a moment, recalling that this was a common human greeting known as a handshake. Tentatively, she reached out and clasped his hand. The instant their skin touched, Lorana inhaled sharply. Commander Riker's hand was so warm, his grip gentle but confident. A tingle raced up her arm and across her neck, causing her vestigial gills to flutter. "I am Lorana Vox," she managed, hardly recognizing her own breathless voice. "Chief xenobiologist. The honor is ours, Commander. Your reputation precedes you." "Please, call me Jace," he said, his lips curling into a roguish smile that made Lorana's knees feel strangely unstable. "I hope we can use this historic opportunity to get to know each other. I have so many questions about the Zephyrian people." "Of course," Lorana said, fighting to regain her equilibrium. "I would be happy to share our knowledge, and I look forward to learning about your fascinating species as well." As she escorted the human delegation on a tour of the research vessel, pointing out the hydroponics bay and the zero-gravity training sphere, Lorana felt Commander Riker's gaze on her like a physical touch. Every time their eyes met, she felt that same exhilarating jolt, that same flutter in her chest. It was completely illogical. Zephyrians were a cerebral people, prizing intellect and emotional control above base urges. Physical attractiveness was irrelevant to them when choosing a mate. Yet Lorana couldn't deny the effect this human male was having on her. The way her skin flushed cobalt when he leaned in close to examine a piece of equipment. The way her heart raced when their hands brushed reaching for the same data pad. It was unnerving and strangely thrilling. "I must say, I'm impressed," Riker said as they returned to the observation deck at the end of the tour. His eyes glimmered with sincere admiration as he looked around at the elegant curves and luminous screens of Zephyrian technology. "The Celestia is a marvel, as are her crew." His gaze lingered on Lorana as he spoke that last part, filled with a heat and intensity she had never encountered before. She felt stripped bare before him, as if he could see past her careful Zephyrian reserve to the storm of unfamiliar emotions swirling inside her. "You are too kind," she demurred, trying to ignore the way her heart pounded against her ribs. The Celestia is but one of many ships tasked with expanding our knowledge of the universe and its inhabitants. And you've been doing an exceptional job, Riker said softly. He took a step closer to her, so near she could feel the warmth radiating from his body. But I get the feeling there's a lot more to you than just your scientific prowess, Lorana Vox. I'd like to find out what's beneath that cool Zephyrian exterior. Lorana's eyes widened at his boldness, at the blatant interest simmering in his gaze. No Zephyrian would ever be so forward, especially not with an alien they had just met. It was impulsive, irrational, dangerous. And yet, some reckless part of her yearned to answer his unspoken challenge, to throw aside a lifetime of discipline and see where this human's brazen overtures might lead. I'm not sure what you mean, she stammered, hating the breathless catch in her voice. I think you do, Riker murmured. His fingertips brushed her cheek, a gossamer caress that sent sparks dancing across her nerves. There's a fire in you, Lorana. I can see it in your eyes. You're not nearly as cold and logical as you pretend to be. Lorana's breath caught in her throat. Every cell in her body was attuned to his touch, to the magnetism of his presence. It would be so easy to sway forward those last few inches, to taste his alien lips and discover if the human legends of kissing were true. A sudden chime from the communications array made them both start. Heart pounding, Lorana leaped away from Riker as if scalded. The Zephyrian High Council has hailed us. Captain Zoran's voice crackled over the link. They are eager to speak to our distinguished guest. Of course, Riker said smoothly, as if nothing untoward had occurred. Lead the way, Captain. As he strode past Lorana, he shot her a look filled with unspoken promises. To be continued, he murmured, too low for the others to hear. Lorana watched him go, pulse racing, palms damp with perspiration. What exactly had she gotten herself into? This human commander with his searing eyes and bold touches had awakened something inside her, something wild and reckless and hungry. She shook her head, trying to compose herself. She was a Zephyrian scientist, not some hormonal adolescent. She would control these irrational impulses. But deep down, she knew it was already too late. Jace Riker had lit a fire inside her, and Lorana feared that not even the icy depths of space could quench the flames. Over the next several solar cycles, Lorana found herself working in close proximity to Commander Jace Riker as the Celestia's crew and the human delegation collaborated on a series of scientific and cultural exchange projects. Despite her best efforts to maintain a professional distance, she couldn't help but be drawn to the charismatic Earthman. Jace was unlike any male she had ever met. He was brilliant, with a keen mind that grasped complex Zephyrian scientific concepts with ease. But he was also physically dynamic, often eschewing the Celestia's advanced transportation tubes to stride through the corridors on his muscular legs. Lorana would catch herself staring at the flex of his shoulders beneath his uniform, the confident set of his jaw, and have to quickly look away before he noticed. But it wasn't just Jace's intellectual and physical prowess that captivated her. It was his insatiable curiosity, his genuine interest in Zephyrian culture. He was always asking questions, seeking to understand the customs and beliefs that shaped her world. "Tell me about your people's art," he said one evening as they worked late in the xenobiology lab, cataloging samples from a recent survey mission. "What do Zephyrians consider beautiful?" Lorana paused, surprised by the question. Zephyrians were a pragmatic race, not given to excessive aesthetics. "We appreciate simplicity, elegance, functionality," she said after a moment. "A well-designed tool or a concise equation can be considered a work of art." Jace cocked his head, his green eyes sparkling in the lab's blue light. "But what about the beauty of the natural world? The colors of a nebula, the song of an alien bird, the grace of a body in motion. Do those things move your people?" Lorana felt herself flush. There was something in the way he said body in motion, a husky undertone that made her scales prickle with awareness. "Some of us find aesthetic value in such things," she allowed. but they are considered personal indulgences, not the basis for our culture as a whole. That's a shame, Jace murmured. He reached out and brushed a strand of her silver hair behind her ear, his fingertips grazing the sensitive skin at her temple. Because from where I'm standing, Zephyrian beauty is undeniable. Lyrana's breath hitched. She knew she should pull away, put some distance between herself and this dangerous human male. But her body refused to obey, attuning to his touch like a moonflower opening to the night. Jace, she whispered, hardly recognizing her own voice. We can't. My people would never approve. Then maybe it's time for a change, he said softly, cupping her cheek in his broad palm. Maybe it's time to stop denying what's between us. And then he was kissing her, his warm human lips moving over hers with exquisite gentleness. Lyrana gasped, her eyes fluttering shut as sensation flooded her body. She had never been kissed before. Zephyrians didn't express affection in such a way. But somehow her mouth knew just how to respond, opening under his with a needy little whimper. Jace groaned and pulled her closer, his arms coming around her slender form. Lyrana melted against him, reveling in the solid heat of his body, the intoxicating scent of his skin. When his tongue swept into her mouth, tasting her, claiming her, she felt a rush of liquid heat between her thighs. It was that shocking surge of arousal that finally broke through the haze of pleasure clouding her mind. With a gasp, Lyrana tore herself out of Jace's arms, stumbling back against the lab bench. No, she panted, pressing trembling fingers to her tingling lips. We can't do this, Jace. It's forbidden. My people would never accept a union between a Zephyrian and a human. It goes against everything we believe. Jace's eyes flashed with frustration and hurt. Damn your rules, Lyrana. This is about us, about what we feel for each other. You can't deny that you want this as much as I do. Tears stung Lyrana's eyes. He was right. She did want him, with a ferocity that shook her to her core. But she was a daughter of Zephyrus, a respected scientist. She couldn't just throw away a lifetime of obedience and tradition for an alien male she barely knew. I'm sorry, she whispered, but I can't be what you want me to be. I won't betray my people. Jace's jaw clenched, his eyes bright with pain. For a moment, Lyrana thought he might argue, might try to convince her. Part of her desperately wanted him to. But instead he straightened his shoulders and gave her a stiff nod. I understand, he said, his voice rough. I won't ask you to go against your principles, but I won't pretend that I don't feel what I feel for you, Lyrana. I can't switch off my emotions like one of your computers. With that, he turned on his heel and strode out of the lab, leaving Lyrana feeling cold and bereft. She slumped against the bench, hot tears spilling down her cheeks. What had she done? She had found something rare and precious with Jace, a connection that transcended the vast differences between their species, and now she had thrown it away, all for the sake of hidebound Zephyrian tradition. But as she watched the door slide shut behind him, Lyrana knew it was too late to call him back. She had made her choice, no matter how much it made her heart ache. Her duty to her people had to come first. Little did she know that forces beyond her control were already at work, forces that would shake the very foundations of Zephyrian society, and lead her right back into Jace Riker's arms. In the solar cycles following that passionate encounter in the xenobiology lab, Lyrana threw herself into her work, determined to forget about Jace Riker and the forbidden desires he had awakened in her. She spent long hours sequestered in her private research chamber, poring over genetic samples and biochemical analyses, trying to lose herself in the comforting certainty of scientific inquiry. But even as she immersed herself in her studies, she couldn't escape the growing sense of unrest aboard the Celestia. Whispers flew through the corridors, furtive gossip about the inappropriate closeness between the Zephyrian crew and their human guests. There were rumors of secret trysts, of cultural contamination, of a breakdown in the very order that held Zephyrian society together. Lyrana did her best to ignore the murmurs, to focus on her duties, but everything changed the day the Zephyrian High Council hailed the Celestia with an urgent transmission. Dr. Vox, Captain Zoran said grimly, his holographic image flickering above her desk. Your presence is requested on the bridge immediately. We have a situation. Lorana's heart lodged in her throat as she hurried to the bridge, her mind racing with terrible possibilities. Had there been an accident among the research teams? A diplomatic breach with the humans? But when she stepped onto the bridge, she found something far worse waiting for her. The view screen was filled with the stern visages of the Zephyrian High Counselors, their silver robes glinting in the stark light. Dr. Lorana Vox, the first counselor said, her voice cold as vacuum. You stand accused of engaging in an inappropriate relationship with a member of an alien species in direct violation of Zephyrian law. What say you to these charges? Lorana felt the blood drain from her face. How had they found out about her and Jace? They had been so careful, so discreet. I don't know what you're talking about, she stammered, forcing herself to meet the first counselor's piercing gaze. I have done nothing to violate our laws or compromise my duties. Do not lie to us, Dr. Vox, the second counselor snapped. We have evidence of your illicit liaison with the human commander. Sensor logs, security footage, eyewitness accounts. Your shameful conduct has brought disgrace upon the Celestia and the entire Zephyrian race. Lorana's hands curled into fists at her sides, shame and anger warring in her chest. How dare they accuse her of disgrace, when all she had done was follow her heart? Sensor logs can be altered, footage manipulated, she said, fighting to keep her voice steady. Whatever evidence you think you have, it's not what it looks like. Commander Riker and I have a strictly professional relationship. Professional? The third counselor scoffed. Is it professional to allow an alien to touch you intimately, to sully your body with his crude human desires? You have forgotten your place, Dr. Vox. You have forgotten what it means to be Zephyrian. Lorana opened her mouth to argue, but before she could speak, the doors to the bridge hissed open, and Jace Riker strode in, his green eyes blazing with righteous anger. Lorana has forgotten nothing, he snarled, coming to stand beside her before the view screen. It is you who have forgotten what it means to be alive, to feel something beyond cold logic and blind obedience. Lorana and I have done nothing wrong. Our bond harms no one. And I won't let you punish her for a love as pure and natural as starlight. The counselors gaped at him, clearly shocked by his audacity. No one spoke to the High Council in such a way, especially not an alien. You dare presume to lecture us, human? The first counselor said icily. This is none of your concern. Dr. Vox is a daughter of Zephyris, bound by our laws and traditions. Her dalliance with you is a perversion, an abomination. It cannot be allowed to continue. You're wrong, Jace said simply. He reached out and took Lorana's hand in his, interlacing their fingers. She startled at the contact, but didn't pull away. His touch gave her strength, bolstered her resolve. Lorana's feelings for me are her own. They arise from the deepest parts of her, the parts your suffocating rules can't touch. She has a right to choose her own path, her own love. And I won't let you take that from her. The counselors stared at their linked hands, their faces twisting with shock and revulsion. For a moment, Lorana thought they might simply cut the transmission, retreating into offended silence. But then the first counselor's eyes narrowed, her mouth thinning to a razor line. You leave us no choice then, Dr. Vox, she said coldly. As of this moment, you are relieved of your duties aboard the Celestia. You are to return to Zephyris immediately to face disciplinary action. And you, Commander Riker, are hereby banned from all Zephyrian territories on pain of death. Your perverse influence will spread no further. Lorana's heart seized in her chest. Beside her, Jace stiffened, his hand tightening around hers. And if we refuse, he asked quietly, the words like a lance of fire. If we choose to stay together, to fight for our right to love. The first counselor's lips peeled back from her teeth. Then you will both be branded as traitors, she hissed, and hunted to the ends of the galaxy. The screen went dark, plunging the bridge into shocked silence. Lorana turned to Jace, tears blurring her vision. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I never meant for you to bear the consequences of my actions. I should have been stronger, should have stayed away from you." "No," Jace said fiercely. He cupped her face in his hands, wiping her tears with his thumbs. "Never apologize for what we have, Lorana. It's worth fighting for, no matter the risk. We'll find a way through this together. I promise." As he drew her into his arms, holding her like she was the most precious thing in the universe, Lorana let herself believe him. Let herself hope that their love could overcome even the immutable laws of her people. But deep down, she knew it wouldn't be that simple. The Zephyrian High Council's wrath was legendary, their reach inescapable. And now that they had decreed her relationship with Jace forbidden, they would stop at nothing to destroy it. And them. Despite the warmth of Jace's embrace, Lorana shivered. For the first time in her life, the vast expanse of the galaxy felt cold and dark, and full of danger. The only light was the love shining in Jace's eyes as he gazed down at her. She could only pray it would be enough to guide them through the shadowed paths ahead. In the chaotic solar cycles following the High Council's decree, Lorana and Jace fled the Celestia, knowing they would find no sanctuary among her people. With the aid of a few loyal crewmates who believed in their cause, they stole a small research shuttle and set out into the lawless fringes of the galaxy, one step ahead of the Zephyrian bounty hunters dispatched to bring them to justice. At first, Lorana was racked with guilt and doubt, questioning whether she had doomed them both with her selfish desires. But Jace never wavered, his love for her a steady flame that warmed her even in the coldest reaches of space. "We're in this together," he told her fiercely, his eyes blazing with conviction. "No matter what happens, I will never regret choosing you, choosing us." As they hopped from spaceport to spaceport, taking odd jobs to fuel their ship and stay off the grid, Lorana began to uncover unsettling rumors about her own people. Whispers of an ancient prophecy, suppressed by the High Council for generations, that spoke of a coming unity between the children of Zephyris and the children of Earth. At first, Lorana dismissed the rumors as mere superstition, the fanciful imaginings of primitive cultures. But the more she dug, the more evidence she found that the prophecy was real, and that she and Jace were at its center. "I don't understand," she said late one night cycle, poring over a stolen data scroll in their cramped shuttle quarters. "Why would the High Council hide something like this? If our union is foretold, destined, then why punish us for fulfilling it?" Jace rubbed his chin, his brow furrowed in thought. "Maybe because it threatens their power," he mused. "A joining between our peoples would shake up the status quo, blur the lines they've worked so hard to maintain. Can't have the masses thinking for themselves, making their own choices about who to love." Lorana shook her head, frustrated. "But that's not the Zephyrian way. We believe in truth and reason. Why cling to an outdated taboo when the very cosmos is telling us to evolve beyond it?" Jace pulled her close, dropping a kiss on her hair. "Fear makes people do funny things, love. Even logical, enlightened people like the Zephyrians. Change is scary, especially when it upends everything you thought you knew." Lorana sighed, leaning into his strong embrace. "Do you really think that's what we represent? Change on a galactic scale?" "I think," Jace said slowly, "that the universe has a way of course-correcting itself, of putting certain souls in each other's paths when the time is right for growth, for transformation. Maybe that's what this prophecy is really about. Not some grand destiny, but a signpost pointing the way to a better future. And maybe we're the ones meant to light that path, by living our truth no matter the opposition." Lorana turned her face into his chest, breathing in his scent of starship fuel and warm human skin. "I hope you're right," she whispered, "because the more I learn, the more I feel in my bones that our love is meant to be a catalyst for something extraordinary. But I'm afraid of what it might cost us, and the galaxy, to get there." Jace tipped her chin up, his eyes soft and serious as they met hers. "Whatever the cost," he vowed, "we'll pay it together. I'm not afraid of a few narrow-minded old tyrants or some vague cosmic destiny. The only thing I fear is losing you. You're my true north, Lorana, my guiding star. With you by my side, I can face anything." He sealed his promise with a fierce kiss, pouring all his love and courage into the press of his lips on hers. Lorana drank him in like he was the very air she needed to breathe, her heart swelling with the brilliant ache of belonging. In that moment, with Jace's arms around her and the limitless vista of space unfurling beyond their viewport, Lorana finally understood what the Zephyrian mystics meant when they spoke of the union of matter and energy that birthed the universe. She and Jace were like two stars colliding, their fusion inevitable, inescapable, a force of nature that would reshape reality itself. Let the High Council rage. Let the prophecy unfold as it would. For Lorana knew now that her love for Jace was more than just a personal choice. It was a pivot point upon which the future of the galaxy would turn. And she was ready to move worlds to keep that love alive. But even as hope kindled in Lorana's heart, dark forces gathered at the edges of known space. Zealots determined to stop the prophecy at any cost and destroy the destined lovers before their bond could light the way to a new era. For in a galaxy built on secrets and shadows, even the brightest love must fight to survive. As Lorana and Jace raced across the stars, pursued by both the Zephyrian authorities and the shadowy Cable determined to thwart the prophecy, they began to hear other stories, whispers of forbidden unions flaring to life in every corner of the galaxy. A Pleiadian princess and her human bodyguard, risking everything to be together. A Lyrian scientist and a human explorer, forging a bond in the heart of a black hole. An Arcturian hive queen and her human consort, defying the rigid castes of their insectoid society. Everywhere the destined lovers turned, it seemed, others were blazing the same trail, guided by the same cosmic imperative. And with each new story of defiance and devotion, the ramshackle alliance forming around Lorana and Jace grew stronger, bolder, more determined to stand against the tide of oppression and prejudice. But the forces arrayed against them were formidable and utterly ruthless. The Zephyrian fleet hounded them from sector to sector, while the cultists sabotaged their ships and seeded disinformation to turn the galaxy against them. In a desperate bid to rally their scattered allies, Lorana and Jace made a daring strike against a Zephyrian communication hub, hoping to broadcast the prophecy to every inhabited world. But the mission went tragically wrong, and Jace was captured, dragged away in chains to the most dreaded prison moon in the galaxy. Lorana was inconsolable, half-mad with grief and rage, but she refused to give up, refused to abandon the male who had taught her the true meaning of love and sacrifice. Marshalling every ship and soldier at her command, she launched a suicide mission to breach the prison's impregnable defenses and free her beloved. The battle was meteoric, apocalyptic, the very fabric of space-time warping and buckling with the clash of ancient technologies and newborn passions. Ships burned, worlds crumbled, suns winked out like candle flames. And at the center of the conflagration, Lorana and Jace fought their way to each other, their desperate hands clasped, their blood mingling on the obsidian floors of the prison. In that moment, as they stared into each other's eyes across the carnage, the prophecy's final secret unfurled like an Aldebaran lily. For it was not the joining of bodies or minds, or even hearts that would change the course of the galaxy. It was the joining of souls. As Lorana and Jace's lips met in a fierce, claiming kiss, their very essences fused, two halves of a cosmic whole clicking into sublime alignment. A shockwave of pure love rippled out from their embrace, washing over friend and foe alike, dissolving armor and ideologies and ancient hatreds like so much gossamer. And in its wake, a new understanding dawned, as bright and unstoppable as the birth of a star. The morphogenetic field of the galaxy had shifted, the old paradigm of division and xenophobia collapsing under the onslaught of something far more powerful, the fundamental truth that all beings are one, bound in the intricate dance of the universe, and that any love sincerely given is a love that ennobles the cosmos entire. In the aftermath, as the guns fell silent, and the smoke cleared, Lorana and Jace stood hand in hand among the ruins of the old order. There would be much rebuilding to do, many hearts and minds still to win. But they would do it together, as they had done everything since the moment their eyes first met across a crowded Starliner deck. The prophecy had been fulfilled, but their story was only beginning. For in a galaxy remade by love, anything was possible. And as they turned to face the waiting stars, Lorana knew that whatever challenges lay ahead, she would never doubt her heart again. For she carried within her the most powerful force in the universe, a force that had rewritten destinies and changed the course of worlds. The force of a love as boundless and eternal as the shining reaches of space itself. The end.